Hi, this is Dennis Fassett, the Cashflow Mercenary. Welcome to another installment of Cashflow Mercenary TV. I was cleaning out my home office over the past weekend, and I do this probably twice a year, whether it needs it or not. And came up with just all kinds of crap that was critical 7 or 8 months ago that doesn't mean anything right now. So I ended up filling 5 of those paper grocery bags with the handles filled with paper and just got rid of them. So it felt great, looks great. Now I'm ready to go. But it's interesting, I found, in doing this clean out, I found the paperwork from the first apartment building I ever went after. And I was looking through it, and it really brought back some memories, and it really provides a good lesson. That's what I want to talk to you about today. This was a 5-unit down in Flat Rock, typical bread and butter, working class type of apartment building. Profitability was very good, but the seller was underwater. And the seller was a young professional woman who had decided, late 20s, early 30s, decided that she wanted to get into investment properties, build some wealth, do some of these things before she got married. I mean, directionally correct in everything she was doing. Did some research, looked around, and settled on this property. And the one mistake she made, though, was in her due diligence when she looked at the numbers. And the way it worked out was that the rents that were coming in were about $2,000 a month. The expenses in terms of her mortgage payment, interest, and taxes were about $1,800 a month. So she's thinking, so her analysis was, well, I've got $200 positive cash flow, must be a good deal. So she bought it based on those terms. Well, if you own an apartment building or if you've been watching this space at all, there are a lot more expenses you need to consider than those 3. And so the reality, instead of being $200 flush a month in cash flow, she was $500 upside down each and every month, which actually she paid for 7 or 8 months out of her own pocket, because she thought that things were going to turn around, that her analysis was right and things were going to turn around for her, and it ended up not being the case. And she ended up giving the building back to the bank. Sad story. But the point is, folks, is that get help with the due diligence, especially if it's your first apartment building. And get help from somebody that's actually owned an apartment building before. There are a lot of brokers in this area that'll love to sell you a building that don't have a freaking clue of what it takes to own an apartment building. And those are the scary people to me, because I dealt with some of that when I was buying my own. And they want to throw out terms like cost per door, like it matters, and that type of thing, when all I cared about was ROI, or return on investment. And most of these folks that didn't own apartment buildings didn't speak ROI. And so I went and found somebody that did, and which made all the difference in the world. So I recommend, folks, that if your broker doesn't speak ROI, that you find somebody that owns a building to help you. I mean, I'll do it. I do consulting on apartments. I'd be happy to help you. It's a couple of hours. It'd be a couple $100, and it's money well spent, because if you're buying your first building, you really need help understanding how the numbers all roll up. And a consultant can't help you make the decision, or can't make the decision for you. They can just make sure the numbers are rolling up, and you're taking everything into consideration and asking the right questions. So I highly recommend that you do that. And one other thing, folks, it's, a lot of people, they like to start small in their buildings. They want to start with 4 or 5, 10 units or whatever, because it's easier. Well, folks, I'm telling you, that's not the case. Big buildings are a lot more forgiving than small buildings when it comes to the numbers. Now, I'll give you one example. If I have a 100-unit building and I have 1 vacancy, that's a 1% vacancy. Most 100-unit buildings can handle a 1% vacancy without breaking the bank. Well, if I've got a 5-unit apartment building and I've got 1 vacancy, that's 20% vacancy, and that's generally the most you can have without going to negative cash flow. So big buildings are a lot more forgiving than small buildings. So contrary to what you might think, you need to be a lot more detailed and a lot more thorough on your due diligence on small buildings than you do on large buildings. In case in point, I just passed on an 11-unit downriver because we were about 1% apart on the land contract financing terms. Deals are that thin when they're small. So I encourage you to get some help on the due diligence. It'll be worth the money that you spend. This is Dennis Fassett, the Cashflow Mercenary. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll talk again tomorrow.